Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. I'm your host, still a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero. We're going back to 2013. We're on part 2. So obviously, things weren't going my way. I'm sitting here losing all these jobs and going through this alcoholic torture. And man, the last couple of weeks, some really, really close friends of mine are going through some of the things that I went through mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And, one guy was in this rehab for about the last 3 months. He got tricked into, actually him and his family got tricked into sending him into this Scientology rehab. He's basically done everything the opposite that I suggested. And, now he's back doing his thing. And I'm not sure if he's quite drinking, but he's definitely going through some hard times. And, I wish he would pay more attention to what I have to say because, I can only help people the way I had to learn. Another close friend of mine, we've been friends for about 5 years, and she's struggling just the way I have. She drinks very similar to the way I used to, and, she puts her safety in danger, and I had to make one of the toughest decisions I ever made in my life the other day. I had to call the police to take her into custody because we didn't know what else to do with her, and we feared for her life. I broke down into tears. This unsettling disease of alcoholism or even drug addiction can take people out, man, and it's deadly. So, many people continue to ask, why would Dan do these shows and put out all this dirty laundry out for everybody to listen to? I mean, what kind of an ego does this guy got putting together a show for 20 or 30 minutes every couple of weeks and talk about his life? Doesn't he have anything else better to do? And for those of you who've been watching from the very start, you kind of know what the purpose of this whole project has been. If you don't know what it has to do with, basically, we're going to take the character that I used to be, thoroughly defined where I was at over the years, and in the next coming weeks to months, as the timeline between 2007 to 2017 is completed, I'll get back more into those characteristics that I was going through and those events that had to take place and how I changed those things. You see, the events of my life had to happen in the chronological order that they did in order for me to get to where I'm at right now and to feel as good as I do right now. And the evidence is that they did. So anybody can doubt whatever my motive is. They can doubt the situations that occurred. It doesn't really concern me. I'm just telling my story. I'm going to incorporate some of these great books that inspired me over the years, and what I took from them, and what I learned from them. And hopefully, if you or somebody else that you know is going through any type of hell in their life, you can take these episodes and you can say, well, this is what this guy used to be like, and now this is where he's at today. So anybody can recover if they're willing to take responsibility for their life and then be sincere and make a change. So, I remember back in 2013, I was supposed to facilitate a group at 24th Street and Florida Street, and my buddy Ken was supposed to be presenting for me that day, and it happened to be my 33rd birthday. Actually, no, 34th birthday. Anyway, we're in April 2013. I had been on a drinking bender, and I remember the guy I was living with at the time, he had given me some Seroquel, which is some type of stabilizer. I really don't know, but I combined it with the booze. And I remember laying on the floor, on the hard floor of his apartment, and him coming home trying to pick me up, this basically collapsed carcass on the ground. I couldn't make it down the street. I was thoroughly embarrassed. And, there's a lot of nice people that you may have in your life who are just flat out flakes. They aren't responsible people, and that's the person I became. I was not reliable. I was so engulfed in self-pity and remorse and resentment. My alcoholism just was out of control, and I couldn't be a productive human being, and I was letting a lot of people down. I hurt a lot of people. I want to go here to Sermon on the Mount. Page 128 and 129. Some good stuff here. Check this out. Emmett Fox says, innumerable schemes have been designed to bring about happiness by making changes of some sort in man's external conditions while leaving the quality of his mentality untouched. And always the result had been the same: failure. We are now in a position to see why this must be so, because the very nature of our being is such that it is only by a change in consciousness that our outer conditions can really be altered. The answer is that, as we have already seen, the change of one's consciousness is really very hard work, calling for constant, unceasing vigilance and a breaking of mental habits, which is sure to be very troublesome for a time. The natural man is lazy, always tends to take the line of least resistance, and so in this, as in lesser matters, he does not get down to bedrock principles until he is compelled to. How sick of being sick was I going to have to get? And man, this went on for years. These embarrassing things. I remember I got loaded, and somehow I got onto Craigslist, and I'm putting up this sex ad, apparently, right? So I get this stupid picture of my big smiling face from years before. I posted on Craigslist under men seeking women, and it said 30-something-year-old Italian man seeking black booty. Big bold letters with a description of what I want to do in the bedroom. Now, this derelict behavior only occurs when I'm under the influence of alcohol, to that extreme, of course. So with my luck at the time, a couple of my pals were in their office at work one day, and they decided to go have a few laughs and go on Craigslist at the exact time that this goes up. So they get their hands on it, Mark and Jamie, and they decided to, I don't know what they did. They took a screenshot or something, and it starts getting circulated to cell phone to cell phone to cell phone of all my buddies, and they got their hands on it, and this spread like wildfire. A couple hours or so later, or maybe the day after, my friend Jen calls me up, and she is pissed. I remember I was walking up 24th Street, and I kind of remember doing it, but I wasn't quite sure, so I just started in with the lies. I was bombed, I was embarrassed. She's yelling and screaming, telling me I'm a liar. She was so upset with me. Oh man, I felt bad. And I'm telling her it wasn't me, I was framed, all this other kind of nonsense. And these are the kinds of things that was happening. I was directly affecting all the people in my life. This is the circle of engulfment that I've talked about in other episodes. So I remember within that time frame, I was fumbling down the 16th and Mission. I ran into this 40-year-old white girl. She was a hooker, and she was a crack hooker. And I remember I picked up some Steel Reserve, and I believe her spot was on 17th and Cap Street around the corner where she was doing her business. And we were sitting in this little alley, and I'm admiring graffiti as I'm drinking my Steel Reserve, and she's smoking her crack. And she's sitting there complaining to me about her life, and she can't figure out why her boyfriend left her. Now I'm sitting here, and I'm like, well, the answer's quite clear. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're hanging out with a derelict like me in an alley, and you're smoking crack, and you're turning tricks, and he knows it, and you're living out of an SRO hotel room. Now, even to a fool like me, it's obvious why things weren't going right for her. So she was insulted when I brought this to her attention. Now, this is how crazy alcohol can get. This mind-altering substance creates me and many others to do things that we wouldn't normally do. I don't smoke crack. I absolutely can't stand graffiti. And the hookers, well, I guess the hookers weren't so bad. But at any rate, I wouldn't have been in that position if I was drinking. So, again, I'm losing jobs, bad living situations, zero prayer or accountability whatsoever, and hanging out with people that I normally wouldn't hang out with. So I remember sometime a few months later, after I'd lost these jobs that I mentioned in the previous episode, I had gotten a call from Child Services, and they told me they were going to open up an investigation with regarding some accusations or suspicion of some things that I'm not going to discuss going on with me and my daughter at the time. And I was appalled, irate, and disgusted. I was so mad that things had gotten to this level. And I went on an alcoholic run. I told off this person who told me they were going to be calling another person to investigate this situation. It was absolutely preposterous. So I'm on this alcoholic run, and I had nowhere to go. And I needed to get out of the place I was staying at. I was causing discomfort with the guy I was living with. And I remember I went down to San Mateo, and my old buddy Jamie Baker, he let me crash his place for the night, and he offered to give me $400 so I could get this hotel for the week, in an SRO, single room occupancy hotel on Broadway. So he's going to loan me $450 or so. And I remember I crashed over there at night, and he had to go to work the next day, and I kept on going back to the liquor cabinet to get some Jack Daniels in me and Coors Lights and whatever, and I'm just getting loaded. And he woke me up, and he said it's time to go, and he sent me on my way with some cash. And I got a call back from Child Services saying that I was innocent and they were dropping the case, so there's no need for any further investigation. Basically, it was a horse shit accusation, which I knew it was. But so yeah, I mean, I was relieved, but I knew that I was innocent or whatever I was being accused of. And I was so angry and so just disgusted with the people involved, let's just say. So anyway, I go on this alcoholic run, right? And I remember I was wasted. I had all this money in my pocket, and I'm fumbling down El Camino in San Carlos. I got off the bus, and I remember just collapsing on my back. It was hot that day. I was laying on my back. I should have been arrested. I'm laying on my back on El Camino, and the phone rings, and it's this dude, Jeff C., that I was in the Salvation Army with. And he says, "Where are you at?" And I told him I was dying and all this stuff, and somehow I disclosed I had this money on me, right? So he came right up. So I don't know if this dude was in his addiction or not, but he was in need of money, and I feel this was a big mistake. So he picks me up. We're going all these places in San Francisco, and I'm drinking wine. I'm pounding these big old tall things of wine, right? And something happens where I black out, and I come 2 hours later in some hospital out in the East Bay. So he had called an ambulance thinking I had a seizure or something. I'm not really sure. But I stayed at the hospital to be watched for a few days. The money was gone. He's trying to tell me that he put the money, he says he threw the money into the ambulance as he was taking off, which I think is BS. I think he went out and scored some pills or whatever he was into, but that's another story. The story wasn't adding up. The money was in my pocket when I was with him. So the money's gone. I'm in the hospital. I get released, got nowhere to go. And I had this huge medical bill of like $27,000 for staying there, right? It was just an outrageous bill. At this point, I got no job. And I remember I went to Cherry Hill Detox for the day, and I was there for just a few hours. I'm laying on these black like plastic mats or something on the ground. They're offering me a cup of noodles. It was filthy. It was disgusting. I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. So I got a voucher to get to BART. And I got back to either the Peninsula or wherever I was at. And I remember a few days or a few weeks later, I had this bill, and I wrote this letter trying to get it covered by charity for this huge bill that I got for the hospitalization. Edmund Fox in the Sermon on the Mount also talks about the law of retribution, which I thoroughly believe in, because over the years after this incident, I got the bill covered because I basically came in with a red face. I was sunburned. I hadn't shaved. I was wearing some beat-up clothes. I explained I was an alcoholic. I was homeless. I was basically put on a big act to get this thing covered, right? But through the years, through taxes, penalties, fines, lawyer fees, and other types of interest rates, I ended up paying it back one way or another. So this is why honesty and integrity is very important as far as I'm concerned. The golden rule, the secret, the law of retribution, whatever you want to call it, karma. We get back from the world what we put into it. And I was putting dishonesty in the world at the time, and it came back tenfold. So at the time, my longtime friend Jackie Lopez Arevalo and her boyfriend at the time, now husband Steven, let me spend a couple days at their home. And it was great because I didn't really know Steven. Through all the stuff that was going on in my life, I was separated from all my friends. And the blessing in disguise is that I got to get to know Steven a little bit better. If you were to put Steven and myself together side by side, you probably think these two guys are pals, but we actually had a lot in common. We were watching some type of documentaries, we're having some discussions. I got to know the guy. He's actually one hell of a dude. And I got to hang out with Jackie for a couple days and get caught up, and she was just trying to help, and she knew I was trying to be a better guy, and she was just trying to help her friend out. And I remember there was one day, I was in their living room, and I was looking on their like shelves or mantle or whatever it was, and there was a picture of the Click. which is my faction of friends from high school, and they're at a 49ers game. They're all wearing their jerseys. Now, I was in that picture, but I started crying because I'm like, I don't get to do these things anymore, and it was a direct result of my behavior over the years. I remember I called my friend Kenny Wardell, crying, and I said, I'm looking at this picture, I'm seeing you guys all at this game, and I'm not a part of that anymore. And he's trying to assure me that these days will be back, and I wasn't sure if anything was ever going to come back to me because I was so obsessed with what was wrong in my life, and I just could not I could get sober, but I couldn't stay sober. So I got hired at a small cafe in the Marina District and moved into the Association for Recovering Alcoholics on Haight Street. It's a big pink house, and there's 20 to 30 people that live there. I'm not sure. I was in this 10-man room to begin with, right? And some of the guys that I was in the Salvation Army with had either transferred there or left the Salvation Army and moved there. And they had these group dinners, and there would be some types of self-help groups that would come in. And I remember, like, my second week there, this girl that was friends of friends on Facebook of mine found me, and we started talking on Facebook, and we basically decided to go out on a date. So at this time now, I had about 3 months sober, and I met her down in Burlingame because she lived in Burlingame, and I got off the train, and I went over and we met at Blue Line Pizza, and coincidentally, one of my longtime friends from high school, Brendan Mooney, was working there, and he had just moved back from out of the country, I believe. So it was great to see him. I remember giving him a big hug, and it was just great to see the guy, man. And it was our first date, and I was explaining to her that I don't drink, and I once again, this is what I was advertising. Everybody's on their best behavior the first few months of dating. What was I advertising, and what was I going to deliver? So, we had a nice time, and we gave her a kiss, and went back, and I started this job a couple weeks before at the Marina, like I said, and I was managing this little restaurant in the morning. I was doing some side jobs for that party staff, working some banquets at night. And, I'd get up early in the morning, like 5 a.m., and I'd take the 24 Muni down to Visadero, get off on the Marina, and I'd work till about 2 o'clock, and again, I'm trying to do things my way, and me and the manager had a couple exchanges because the manager was training me. We had these breakfast burritos, and they were making them all soggy. So I put them on the grill and ice, and I got some good feedback from the guests, but they didn't want to do it that way. So a couple times she's correcting me, and I went on a second date, and I'm in my third week at this Association for Recovering Alcoholics. It's basically like a program / clean and sober house, and she invited me over for dinner this time. So I took the train down, and I got off, and she picked me up at the train station. I got to her house, and so I'm getting ready to sit down and eat dinner. She gets me in the door, and all of a sudden she's just all over me like a cheap suit, man. So we're making out. She pulls me into the bedroom, and she starts telling me she wants me to fix her, before dessert before dinner. So I fix her, and she was happy, and I hadn't had any action for probably over a year at this point. And, so she didn't realize that though I was absent from alcohol for 90 days, I was still sick because I wasn't necessarily doing the procedures and the suggestions that were presented to me in the past. So I fix her. We have a nice dinner. She cooked her ass off, and I ended up getting drunk with her that night. She said, "Do you think you can have a couple?" And I got drunk. I never came home, and I never went back to that clean and sober house. I remember I was supposed to go to work, and the next day, and she knew my situation, and she knew that I was hurting from being so far away from Stella. Stella and her mom were still living in San Mateo, and I'm all the way up in the city. So something about my character was different from the guys she dated before. She had been in some abusive relationships, apparently, and she invited me to try moving in with her, and we'll give it a test out. So anyway, I get canned for my job. I didn't show up. So here's what happens. I'm supposed to meet this other cook over in Hunters Point, and he was going to pick me up with his truck at this particular Muni stop, right? So he goes to pick me up, and I see him, and I got after the booze first thing in the morning, right? So I'm all loaded, right? And I had no business going to work again. So I'm hammered at the Muni stop. I see the guy. He's calling me on my phone. I'm like, yeah, I'm over here. And I'm waving, right? So then I get this idea to duck out and hide and not answer my phone, right? So I turn the phone off, I duck, and I'm hiding underneath my jacket at the bus stop, and the guy eventually leaves. A few hours later, after I go back into the booze, I tell my boss, I call him from another line, I tell him that I got punched and I lost my cell phone. And he's like, oh yeah, that's been happening a lot in the city where these people are coming up from behind, they're popping people and they're taking off their iPhones and all this. So I went along with it, and he went along with it, and he didn't know that I was full of shit and lying. And I eventually didn't show back to work again. I was hospitalized again. And, it's just, I'm sitting here making all these excuses. Oh, he was rumored to be a cokehead, and, the man of the owner and all this stuff. And there's more excuses for my behavior. This girl Julie I was dating, she eventually bought me a new phone, and I eventually did actually lose my phone, and it was recovered by somebody at this Burlingame donut shop, and it was actually turned into my boss, who I told I lost the phone coincidentally. So things were just not looking good, man. Everything was just going really, really bad. And Abraham Maslow, he's this visionary, I guess you could call him. Maslow once said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. I didn't know how to handle life. I had no tools. I had one tool, and that was booze. So I like that hammer and nail way of looking at it. So I didn't come home to ARA. I moved in with her. Her drinking and smoking was absolutely ridiculous. Very unhealthy behaviors. Not a good match for a guy like me. She, like I said, she was in abusive relationships. I had completely fooled her with my charm and the bedroom action. So I felt all of a sudden a bit domesticated. We were eating great dinners and we were watching movies, and I'm making dinner for her. She's at work all day. I'm kind of looking for jobs, getting drunk here and there during the day. Little did she know, but she'd find out eventually. The Entitlement Cure. I love this book here. Most entitled people are also dependent people. This is on page 80. Most entitled people are also dependent people. They get away with their attitude because someone is protecting them from its consequences. They would crash and burn a lot sooner if someone refused to make excuses for them, to give them an infinite number of last chances, and to pay for their mistakes. Your entitled person isn't likely to change until he experiences his own dependency and what happens when you no longer act as his safety net. I like that a lot. Some of the nicest people in the world are also total flakes. They can be caring, well-intentioned, and thoughtful, yet at the same time, they can be undependable and unreliable. That's exactly the kind of boyfriend and friend that I was becoming. Love that reading. So in this, I also learned that there's a difference between settling down and settling for somebody. People get in relationships like it's going to validate them. And that's what I felt like I was doing at the time. Am I settling down and really going to look for the right partner? Or am I just going to settle for this and, look like I got it together? Many people do this. I had an episode a few months back about relationships and sex problems. And if you're still having those, I'd revisit that episode. It's pretty good. I got to give myself credit for that one. So I decided to give her a chance, and she decided to give me a chance because we're a couple of codependents. And like I've said in the past, what are my intentions in these relationships? And it doesn't just have to be with another woman. What are my intentions in friendships? What are my intentions in business relationships? What are my intentions on the daily? The people I encounter. So she gives me her grandmother's ring. We decided to get engaged, right? And then she wants me to start trying to get her pregnant. So here I am, getting drunk, getting engaged again with no ring of my own. Internal cum shots, trying to get her pregnant. Totally irresponsible. No job again, might I add. What were we both thinking, me and this woman? I have no clue. So eventually we have a couple disagreements, and she's asking me to leave. She'd call the cops because she's in fear of abuse and all this stuff because we're past relationships. I'm ended up getting arrested. I'm going to First Chance. I'm still looking for work. I remember I was going to buy groceries one day, and I'm in the Burlingame Safeway, and my friend Jen Garrard called me to say hello and see what was going on with me. And she said, "Are you engaged?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And I said it, kind of embarrassingly. And she's like, I don't even know who you are anymore. And I'll never forget that. And I got off the phone with her, and I was just like so embarrassed and disgusted with myself. Because, first the Craigslist sex ads, and now this, and it's just like, it's just getting more and more ridiculous, And Jen and many others were trying to support me through this whole thing over the years of getting sober. Remember, I saw Phil at the library. He was doing a little insurance presentation at the Burlingame Library, and I ran into him, and he happened to catch me on a good day. It was all cleaned up with a nice new haircut, looking like I had it together a little bit. But the obsession with Shauna was killing me, and how wrong the whole parenting thing was, and it was killing me more than the booze. And that's where the disease centers in the mind, and a psychic change needs to take place in order for me not to drink and have this physical allergy, these unusual reactions to alcohol occur. I discovered that I was really trying to be closer to Stella, and I wasn't even in the relationship for the right reasons. I was just trying to get closer to Stella. I was no longer interested in the relationship. She took me to her parents' house for Christmas Eve. Okay, so here's where it really hits the fan. She's telling me about this judgmental family she's got, especially her sister and her mother, right? So she invites me over for Christmas Eve, and she picks me up a 12-pack of Bud Light before she goes to work for a couple hours. And I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. So I get hammered during the day. I put down like 8 or 9 of these beers. I get on Comcast. I'm ordering up all this pornography on Comcast pay-per-view, and I'm stopping it halfway because I didn't like it. I'm restarting new pornos. Pants around my knees with the remote. This absolutely derelict behavior in this hammered state. And I'm still not thinking I should go. She puts me in the car. I'm all dressed up in this nice, badass white shirt that I bought from Express a few years ago. I was so happy to have it on again. I was like, man, I haven't worn this in years. And, this is all the ego. So she takes me over there, and the sister starts questioning why she's got this ring on her finger. So she tells her family that we're engaged with their grandmother's ring. Then she says, oh, you're living together. I said, yeah. She goes, oh, where do you work? And I'm going to tell her, oh, I don't have a job right now. So now I'm explaining why I don't have a job, why we're engaged. Why are you drinking if you're in all this stuff, right? Somehow her sister's looks come up, and I start telling the sister in front of her husband that I found her very attractive. Everything went really, really sour, really fast. Anyway, I tell her family that they're all a bunch of degenerates. They kick me out of the house. She takes me back to the apartment. I completely ruined Christmas Eve for this family. Again, the circle of engulfment. Everybody's getting dragged in because of my BS and me not being able to handle and manage life. So I grabbed a couple things, and I didn't even grab a jacket, and I jumped on the bus. I went up to the BART station, and I just wanted to get some rest. So I pass out, and I end up in Pittsburgh, across the bay. It happened to be the last BART train going to the East Bay. So now I'm stranded after midnight in Pittsburgh. So I'm in the cold. I can't get back. I have to wait for the next train Christmas morning to get back to San Francisco, right? My phone's about to die. I got like $140 to my name. I see this young lady at the BART train station kind of lingering around. In this drunken state, I decide, let's try to, propose some sexual favors with $40. So we start talking about it, and all of a sudden she takes my money and she's not into it, and then she starts ready to call the police. It was absolutely ridiculous, the state of mind I was in. This deplorable, sick, derelict, alcoholic behavior again and again and again. I lay down on this cold cement. Finally, it's 5:30. The train comes. I get off on 16th and Mission so I can go to the liquor store and get some more booze. I started with the Steel Reserve. And lo and behold, there she is. The girl from the previous episode that I handed $80 to. And we had an encounter in the McDonald's bathroom on 16th and Mission. Has an IOU. So she's hanging out with more of her crack hooker friends. And this pimp. So we're drinking, we're talking, and they're smoking their crack on Mission Street, and we're on this porch. And I black out, and I remember being in this hotel room, and I came to a few hours later. I'm missing my nice dress shirt. I have no phone. My poor mother, oh man. I call her from a phone later on. I had to get a new phone. I got a new phone. And apparently my mother was calling me on Christmas morning, wondering where I'm at, and this pimp is answering my phone, trying to sell her my phone, trying to tell her to drive from Santa Rosa down to the Mission so we can sell her my POS, piece of shit, cell phone, back to her for $35. What an embarrassment. So these things just kept on happening over and over and over again. I went back to her place. I eventually got drunk again. I remember I was supposed to go to work on New Year's Eve up in San Francisco, and I blacked out and passed out at the BART station in Millbrae. I woke up in a hospital again, and she showed up at my bedside with some clothes, and it was eventually time for me to go. Another time I got drunk, and she locked me out, and the cops showed up, and they took me into custody because she wouldn't let me in. I just want to get my stuff, you know. All these things continued to happen. It was just really, really bad, man. So that's how 2013 ended up. I ended up in the emergency room at Peninsula Hospital. The freest people in the world are those who have senses of inner peace about themselves. They simply refuse to be swayed by the whims of others and are quietly effective at running their own lives. That was from Wayne Dyer and Pulling Your Own Strings. So why am I doing this? Well, Abraham Maslow said it best. A musician must make music. An artist must paint. A poet must write if he is to be ultimately at peace with himself. I'm Dan Banchero. Thank you for joining me in another edition of the Dan Banchero Show. Next up is 2014, my first bout with homelessness. We'll see you next time. Here's to feeling good all the time. And remember, gather everyone around. This is the family show.